Stories from Upanishads, retold by Arghya Goswami.
Friends, hope you are all doing well. So I am. Today's story is a continuation to the last episode, Yagnavalkya and King Janaka Part 1. This story featured in section 3 and 4 of chapter 4 of Brhadaaranyaka Upanishad. After impressing the king about various facets of Brahman, Yagnavalkya granted a boon to the king. The boon was that the King Janaka can ask him as many questions as he may like. Poor Yagnavalkya never in hindsight thought that this boon would soon become so much troublesome for him as he has to answer a barrage of never-ending questions from the learned and curious king. As often the king would think of some difficult question, he would summon the sage, and he had to come to the court and answer to them to king's satisfaction. Although it was a major source of sage's earning, as he was always handsomely rewarded after each such grilling session. One day, Yagnavalkya came to king's court. He was quite determined that whatever happens, he will not answer any of the king's question. So, confidently he walked to the king. He was greeted and welcomed in the best traditional way. Then, after settling down, the king wanted to ask the sage some glaring questions which was eating him up. As the sage was about to refuse, suddenly, like a bolt of thunder, he remembered his boon. Resigned to his own boon, he mentally got ready for another volley of questions. The king asked, Yagnavalkya, what is the source of light for the man in this world? The sage replied, the sun, your highness. As it is through the light of the sun which is external to the body and helps a man to see. The man sits, goes out to the fields and his workplace, does his work, and returns home when the sun is down. The king nodded and agreed. The interesting thing to note here that king addressed the sage by his name. This meant not only they had developed a level of comfort and friendship, but also king wanted to draw sage's attention. Then the king asked again, what happens when the sun has set? Then what is the source of light for the man in this world? The sage replied, light of the moon, O highness. As using this moonlight, a man sits, goes out, does his work and return. The king said, agreed. It is so, Yagnavalkya. Then the king asked again, what happens when there is no moon or no sun? When both has set, then what will be the source of light for the man in this world? What the king meant here is when there is no sun and it's a new moon night, then when everything is dark all around, then what will be the source of light? The sage replied, fire serves as his light, your majesty. It is through this fire he sits, goes out for work, works and returns. The king again agreed. Then the king kept on asking incremental questions to the sage. For instance, if there is no sun or moon and the fire too goes out, then what will be the source of light for the man? To this question, the sage replied, it is the sound or shabda, which is the source of light for the man. We know that sonar waves is actually used as a form of navigation. We know that in dark night, bats use sonar waves to navigate and hunt its prey. Similarly, in deep ocean, the submarines too use these waves to judge the depth of the ocean and detect any object or obstruction in front of it. Thus, sound forms the source of light for the man. Next, the king asked, Yagnavalkya, what is the source of light for a man when there is no sun, no moon, no light, or no sound? Yagnavalkya replied, the self or Atman serves as his light. In my last episode, I touched upon the three states of consciousness or Turiya. They are Vishwa or the waking stage, engaging the gross and the physical body, Tejasa, the dream state, engaging the subtle body, Pragya, or the deep sleep stage, engaging the casual bliss body. Deeper philosophical meaning may be contemplated as when the eyes or other organs are held in the Vishwa or the waking state by the aids such as lights or sounds. The man can easily move around, work, and attain knowledge. So these external aids serve as a light for the man as it guides him to his destiny. But in Tejas or the dream state, also in Pragya or the deep sleep state, all these external aids are blotted out. However, the purpose of this extraneous light in the waking state is served in the dream state too. As in the waking state, we meet our friends, family, we work, we perform our duties, and then resign to sleep. And when we awake from the deep sleep with some remembrance that we slept happily and knew nothing, that remembrance is the way of light which guides us through Tejasa and Pragya. Therefore, there exists some extraneous light. However, the light of self or Atman is not perceived by the sense organs. This is the light which is inside me, inside you, inside all of us. Another thought process is to contemplate it as when we work, we learn, and we get enlightened. The knowledge only comes from work we do or things we learn. We can attain knowledge anytime, day or night, it doesn't matter. Similarly, using sound or speech, we can also spread knowledge as well as hear them, which again leads us to enlightenment. When all other means of attaining supreme knowledge is not present, then our inner self or Atman leads us to enlightenment. Our inner self leads us ahead as it shows us the light. The king agreed and then immediately asked another question. Which is self, O Yagnavalkya? Yagnavalkya explained. This infinite entity, which is also called Purusha, that is identified with the intellect and resides within oneself, it is the self effulgent light within the heart, which is the intellect. The intellect is the instrument which helps us in everything, just like a lamp in the darkness. It shows us the way out. It is through the mind that one sees and hears. Every object is perceived only as associated with the light of the intellect, just like the lamp lightens up the objects in front of us. In the dark night, all other objects are nothing but channels of this intellect. Friends, a little more on this topic from the commentaries of Adi Shankaracharya. According to him, this self effulgent Atman is just like an emerald or any other gem when dropped for testing into the milk imparts its luster to them. So does the luminous self, being finer than even the heart or intellect, unify and impart its luster to the body and its organs, including the intellect. Although it is within the intellect for these to have varying degree of fineness or grossness in a certain order, and the self or Atman is the innermost of them all. Imagine it like a layers of petals of a lotus in which the body or organs are the outermost petals and the Atman or self is the innermost ones. The intellect being the transparent and next to the self catches the reflection of the intelligence of the self. Therefore, wise men identify themselves with the self first. Then comes the manas, which catches the reflection of the self through the intellect, and then the organs and through the contact with the manas, and lastly the body through the organs. Thus, the self successively illuminate with its own intelligence the entire aggregate of the body and organs. Then Yagnavalkya continued. When a man is born or attains a body, that individual self is connected with the evils, and when he dies, he leaves the body and discards all the evils. That man has only two abodes, this world and the next. The junction between the dream state or Tejasa and the deep sleep or Pragya He surveys two abodes, this and the next world. He sees both the sufferings and joys of the both worlds, and when he dreams, he takes away a little impression of this all embracing world in the waking state or Vishwa, and himself puts the body aside and himself creates the dream body in his place, revealing his own lustre by his own light and dreams. In this state, the man himself becomes the light. Then Yagnavalkya recited a verse. Swapnena shariram bhi prahatya supta suptan bhi chakashiti shukra madaya punaraiti sthanam hiranmaya purusha eka hansaha, which means the radiant, infinite being Purusha who moves alone puts the body aside in the dream state, remaining awake in himself and taking the shining functions of the organs with him, watches those that are asleep, again comes to the waking state. He continued to chant the verses Pranena Rakshana Varam Kulayam Bahish Kulayad Amritash Charitva Sa Yehite Smrito
Yatra.
Kamam Hiranmaya Purusha Eka Hamsaha, which means the radiant infinite being who is immortal and moves alone, preserves the unclean nest or the body with the help of vital force and roams out of the nest, and himself immortal, he goes wherever he likes. Then again he continued, Swapnanta uchva vachami yamano रूपानी देव कुरुते बहुनी उतेव स्त्रीभिः सह मोदमानो जश्य दूते वापि भयानि पश्यन्, which means in the dream world the shining one attaining higher and lower states puts forth innumerable form. He seems to be enjoying himself in the company of women or laughing or even seeing frightful things. Then Yagnavalkya said something very meaningful and deep. Aramasya pashyanti natam pashyanti kashchan, which meant all see his sport, but no one sees him. Although the self is distinct from the body and organs and is present before our very eyes, yet we are unfortunate not to see it or recognize it. The idea is that in the dream state or Tejasa, the self becomes altogether distinct and it's itself the light. So, Yagnavalkya continued that we must not wake the man up suddenly in the dream state, as the man himself becomes the light. As soon as the sage completed this verse, king was elated. He jumped up from his seat and with folded hands said, I give you 1,000 cows. Please instruct me further about liberation. Friends, in the commentaries of Adi Shankaracharya, he mentioned about the debate on the dream state or Tejasha and the waking state or Vishwa. According to him, many scholars believe that there is no difference between the dream state and the waking state of a man. While researching on this subject for the podcast, I found references in the work of Sigmund Freud of late 1800s in which he popularized the idea that the dreams are representation of repressed desire. On further research, I found out that some of the modern theories say that perhaps dreaming doesn't mean anything actually. Instead, dreams are just bits and pieces of different memories that get strung together. These memories are often the ones that are in the forefront of our minds or are the things that we think about frequently. Then on further reading and some research on the content from various eminent universities, I found out that there are many brain activity in the dream state, especially during REM sleep, that is rapid eye movement sleep, as it is the most closely resembles that of the wakeful state. The REM sleep or rapid eye movement sleep is the phase of sleep in which the most dreams occur and is similar to the state of Tejasa or the dream state. On further research, I found out that as per J. Allen Hobson at the Division of Sleep Medicine, Harvard Medical School, REM sleep dreaming is like a virtual reality created from our brain's device. But As per Adi Shankaracharya, this is not true. If we believe there is no difference between these two states, then self is not dissociated from the body and organs, rather mixed up with them. So, self is not itself the light. In order to refute the self luminosity of the Atman, these raconteurs say that there are no difference in dream and waking state. To justify their claim, they too say that the man sees the things in the dreams what he has seen in the waking state. In reality, our dreams are completely different from our waking state. Hence, this claim is completely false, as in the dream state, the body and the organs are at rest. The man can dream only when all the organs have ceased to function. Therefore, no other light or other than Atman of the self can exist in that state. I was researching about dreams for this podcast and found an interesting concept from the University of Berkeley. According to Matthew Walker, the time spent in dream sleep is a healer. The REM sleep or rapid eye movement sleep is the only time when our brain is completely devoid of anxiety triggering molecules nor adrenaline. At the same time, key emotional and memory related structures of the brain are reactivated during the REM sleep as we dream. This means that emotional memory reactivation is occurring in a brain free of key stress chemical, which allows us to reprocess upsetting memories in a safer, calmer environment. During this state, the prefrontal cortex is less active. Just to clarify, the prefrontal cortex of the brain is responsible for planning and logic. Since the prefrontal cortex activity is lower, we often don't recognize the strangeness or implausibility of a dream until we wake up. So, my friends, unfortunately, the studies on the dreams are still in progress, and as a result, we cannot have any conclusion here. I have just laid out both the scientific and the spiritual thoughts on the same plate. Coming back to the story, by illustration of the dream, it has been proven that there is a self-luminous Atman, and then it transcends the forms of death, since it alternately moves between this world and the next, and so on. It is distinct for them. Likewise, it is distinct from the nest of waking and dream states. As Yagnavalkya proved that since it moves alternately from one to another, it is eternal. Then Yagnavalkya continued, the self, after roaming and enjoying himself in both the worlds and merely seeing the results of the good and evil in the deep sleep state, he stays in the profound sleep or pragya and comes back in the inverse order to his former condition, the dream state or tejasa. Then again roaming in the dream state or tejasa and seeing the results of the good and evil in the dream state, he comes back in inverse order to the waking state. He is untouched by whatever he sees in that state, for this is the infinite being or Atman is unattached. Just like a great fish swim alternatively to both the banks of the river, so does the Atman or the infinite being move from dream state to waking state and travel back and forth. The king agrees to this concept. The analogy of the great fish traveling between two banks of a river can be compared to the sleep cycle. According to the scientist, the sleep occurs in 5 stages, that is wake, N1, N2, N3 and REM sleep. The stages N1 to N3 are considered non-rapid eye movement or NREM sleep, with each stage is a progressively deeper sleep. Approximately 75% of sleep is spent in NREM stages. Another point I want to bring up, my friends, I don't know if you have experienced sleep falling or not, but I have experienced it many times. Many times when I am in deep sleep, sometimes it felt like something entered my body or I am falling. I tried to research about this and found out that this feeling is triggered by an involuntary muscle movement called the hypnic jerk that occurs when the body is in a transitional stage between the wakefulness and the light sleep, known as hypnagogic state. When the body enters the state of deep relaxation in the preparation for the sleep, this sensation can be misinterpreted by the brain as the body falling, therefore being in danger, so the hypnic jerk knocks you back into full consciousness. One proposed explanation for the link between the falling and experiencing hypnic jerk in hypnagogic state is that it is the reflex that improves the chances of survival for our ancestors. Wikipedia states this as out of body experience or OOBE. It terms it as a phenomena in which the person perceives the world from a location outside their physical body. And OOBE is a form of autoscopy or seeing self. This term was first introduced by G.N.M. Tyrrell in his book Apparitions in 1943. Later on, it was adopted by researchers such as Celia Green and Robert Monroe as an alternative to belief-centric levels such as astral projection or spirit walking. As per the Vedic scriptures, the state of consciousness, also referred as turiya, which can be achieved by deep yogic and meditative activities, during which a yogi may be liberated from the duality of mind and body, allowing them to intentionally leave the body and return to it. The body carrying out this journey is called Vigyan Dehi. So, if we contemplate this OOBE or sleep fall experienced when our self or Atman travels between the worlds and finally comes back into the waking state from the previous states, some food for your thoughts. Write to me at arghyathings@gmail.com on this. We can discuss this topic further. Yagnavalkya then took another analogy of a hawk. He explained the king that the great bird, after flying for long hours, gets fatigued and moves to its nest. It is similar to the Atman or self getting fatigued after the results of action done by the contact of organs and body in the waking and dream states. In order to remove that fatigue, it enters his own nest or abode, that is, his own self, distinct from all relative attributes, devoid of all exertion caused by the action with its factors and results. He told the king, in him are those nerves called hita, which are as fine as hair split into 1,000 parts and filled with white, blue, brown, green, and red serums. They are the seat of the subtle body in which the impressions are stored. The impressions of the waking state is carried onto the dream state, and similarly impressions of the dream state is imbued in the waking state. In this, he reached the highest state where he thinks, this universe is myself who am all. That this identity with all the universe in his highest state, the Atman's own natural and supreme state. Friends, here we must understand that there are various colors of serum. These colors are due to the intermixing of the nerve matter, bile, and phlegm in various proportions. As per science, the color of serum comes from hydrogen. The hydrogen gives out two colors, a strong dark red and aqua blue. These combine to give pink color. Two colors come from the specific transitions of the hydrogen atom's electron between the different energy levels. It is interesting to note that in the center of the plasma, it is so hot that the electrons are able to escape from their atoms, and so there is less light emitted as no transitions can occur. Around the edges, when the plasma is cooler, the electrons are able to reunite with their nuclei, thereby emitting the light. Each element has its own unique set of electron levels, and hence the light emitted when the electrons jump between the levels gives us a unique signature for that element called the spectrum. So, if there are any contaminants in the plasma, they can show up by changing the color. The color of the pure plasma is pink, and if there is too much beryllium in the walls, that adds the blue-green tinge, then the oxygen is blue in color. As per Upanishad, the subtle body with its 17 constituents has its seat in these nerves, which is the fineness of the 1,000th part of the tip of a hair, and are filled with serums and spread all over the body. Just as to understand the 17 constituents of the subtle body, we must understand the subtle body itself. This body is the body of the mind and vital energies which keeps the physical body alive. Together with the causal body, it is the transmigrating soul or the jiva separating from the gross body upon death. The subtle body is composed of five subtle elements and the elements before they have undergone panchikarana. Panchikarana is a Vedantic theory of how matter came into existence, originating from primordial five subtle elements. They are Shravanadi Panchakaram, the five organs of perception eyes, ears, skin, tongue, and nose. Vagadi Panchakaran, the five organs of action speech, hands, leg, anus, and genitals. Prana Panchakaram, the fivefold of the vital breath, that is prana, the respiration, apana, the evacuation of the waste from the body, vayana, the blood circulation, udana, the actions such as sneezing, crying, vomiting, etc., and samana, the digestion. Manas or mind, and last is buddhi or the intellect, the discriminating wisdom. Then Yagnavalkya said, that is this form and beyond desires, free from evils and fearless, just as a man fully embraced by his beloved wife does not know anything at all, either external or internal. So does this infinite being or self, fully embraced by the Supreme Self or Brahman, not know anything at all. That is his form in which all objects of desire have been attained and are but the self in which is free from all desires and devoid of any grief. In this state, a father is no father, a mother is no mother, worlds are no worlds, the gods are no gods, the Vedas are no Vedas. In this state, the thief is no thief, a killer of a noble Brahmin is no killer, a Chandala is no Chandal, a monk is no monk, a hermit is no hermit. This form of his is untouched by goods or evils, for he is beyond all the woes of his intelligence and heart. Then the sage told the king about the state of profound sleep, where it does not see, smell, taste, speak, hear, think, touch, or know, as it is imperishable. He continued, when there is something else, as it were, then one can see something, one can smell something, one can taste something, one can think something, one can touch something, or one can know something. O Emperor, it becomes as transparent as water. This is the sphere or state of Brahman. Then he instructed the king, Eshasya paramagati, Eshasya paramasampat, Eshosya paramo loka, Eshosya paramanandha, Etasai vananda syayani bhutani matrapu jivanti, which means this supreme attainment, this is the supreme glory, this is the highest world, this is the supreme bliss. On particle of this very bliss, other beings live. The sage said, he who is perfect in physique and is prosperous among men, the ruler of others, and most lavishly enjoyed all human enjoyments, represent the greatest joy among men. This human joy, multiplied 100 times, makes one unit of joy for the mains who have won their world of theirs. The joy of these mains, multiplied 100 times, makes one unit of joy for the world of celestial minstrels. This joy in the world of celestial minstrels, multiplied 100 times, makes one unit of joy for the gods, those who have attained their godhead by their actions. This joy of gods, multiplied 100 times, makes one unit of joy for the gods by birth, as also one who is versed in Vedas, sinless and free from desire. This joy of gods by birth, multiplied 100 times, makes one unit of joy in the world of Prajapati or Viraj, as one who is versed in Vedas, sinless and free from all desires. This joy in the world of Prajapati multiplied 100 times makes 1 unit of joy in the world of Brahman or Hiranyagarbha, as well as one who is versed in Vedas, who is sinless and desireless. This indeed is the supreme bliss. This is the state of Brahman, O Emperor. The king was awestruck. He asked the sage to continue on liberation. At this, Yagnavalkya suspected that the intelligent king wants to possess all his knowledge by the virtue of that boon. However, Yagnavalkya started describing the transmigration and he continued. When this self becomes weak, actually this body that becomes weak, as it is formless. When the self becomes senseless and unable to differentiate or discriminate, then actually body has become senseless. The self is the eternal self-luminous intelligence, the state of helplessness noticeable at the time of death due to the withdrawal of the organs is attributed by ordinary people to the self. The sage continued that due to the external light we can see as light reflects back, but when there is no light we fail to see anything. Then the light of our heart or intelligence aids us to see. The eye becomes united with the subtle body, then the people say he does not see. The nose becomes united, then they say he does not smell. Similarly, the tongue, the vocal organ, ear, skin, intellect unites with the subtle body. Then people say he does not taste or speak or hear or feel or knows. Top of the heart brightens. Through the brightened top, the self departs either through the eye or through the head or any part of the body. When it departs, the vital force follows. When the vital force departs, the organ follows. Then the self has consciousness, goes into the another body, making it conscious. Similarly, the knowledge, work, and the past experiences too goes into another body, making it knowledgeable and experienced. Then the sage makes another illustration. The impressions called past impression under the control of person's knowledge and work stretch out like a leech from the body, retaining their seat in the heart as in the dream state, and build another body in accordance to his past actions. When the new body is made, they leave their old body. The past actions are combined to manifest the organs and their functions, and the external body is formed. When the organs have been arranged, the presiding deities, the fire and the rest come to the body to help the organs. This is the process of formation of a new body. Just as the goldsmith takes a little quantity of gold and creates the new design, so does the self throw his body away and make it senseless and make a newer and better form which is suited to the mains, celestial minstrels or gods or Viraja or Hiranyagarbha or other beings. Then Yagnavalkya recited one of the Mahavakya from Chandogya Upanishad, Ayam Atma Brahma. That self is indeed Brahman, as also identified with intellect, the manas or the mind, and the vital force with the eyes, ears, with earth, water and the ether, with fire, with desire or no desire, with anger and with absence of the anger, with righteousness or unrighteousness, with everything identified, in fact, with what it is perceived or with which is inferred. As it does and it acts, so it becomes. By doing it, it becomes good. By doing evil, it becomes evil. It becomes virtuous through the good acts or vicious through the evil. Other, however, say, self is identified with the desire alone. What it desires, it resolves. What it resolves, it works out. And what it works out, it attains. Friends, point to note here is that self which transmigrates is indeed Brahman. Then Yagnavalkya recited a slok, which means being attached, he together with the work attains the result to which his subtle body or mind is attached, exhausting the results of whatever work he did in his life. He returns from the world to this world for work. Of him who is without desires, who is free from desires, the objects of whose desire have been attained, and to whom all the objects of desires are but the self, the organs do not depart. Being but Brahman, he is merged in Brahman. When all the desires that dwell in his heart are gone, then he, having been immortal, becomes immortal and attains Brahman in this very body. Then the self becomes disembodied and immortal. The prana becomes the supreme self or Brahman, and it becomes the light. On hearing this, tears rolled down his cheeks, and drenched with enlightenment and knowledge of liberation, he announced the reward of 1,000 cows for the sage. However, Yagnavalkya said, still the teachings are not complete, and continued. That very Atman I regard as the immortal Brahman. Knowing Brahman, I am immortal. Those who have known the vital force of the vital force, the eye of the eye, the ear of the ear, the mind of the mind, have realized that ancient primordial Brahman. It should be realized in only one form, for it is unknowable and eternal. The self is taintless, beyond the subtle ether, birthless, infinite, and constant. That great birthless self, which is identified with the intellect and in the midst of the organs, lies in the cosmos within the heart. It is the controller of all, the lord of all, and ruler of all. It does not grow better through good work, nor worse through bad work. It is the protector of all beings. It serves as the boundary to keep the different worlds apart. Knowing it, one becomes a sage. Perhaps for the desire of knowing this self, the monks renounce their homes, leave all other desires away. This self is that which has been described as neti, neti, that is, not this, not this. It is imperceptible, for it is never perceived, undecaying, for it never decays, unattached, for it is never attached, unfettered, it never feels pain and never suffers an injury. A sage conquers both good and evil's thoughts, or the things done or not done does not trouble him. And this has been beautifully described in the verse Esha nityo mahima brahmanasya na vardhate karmana no kanyan tasvai syat padavit tam vivitva na lipete karmana papaken, which means in this eternal glory of a knower of Brahman, it is neither increases nor decreases to work. Therefore, one should know the nature of that alone. Knowing it, one is not touched by the evil action. Therefore, he who knows it such becomes self-controlled, calm, withdrawn into self, enduring and concentrated, and sees the self in his own self. He sees all as self. Evil does not overtake him, but he transcends all evil. Evil does not trouble him, as he consumes all evil. He becomes sinless, taintless, free from doubts, and a Brahmin or a knower of Brahman. This is the world of Brahman, O Emperor, and you have attained it. On hearing this, the King Janaka fell at Yagnavalkya's feet and said, O Yagnavalkya, I give you the empire of Videha and myself too. Please consider me as your servant. So that was the end of part 2 of the story of Yagnavalkya and King Janaka. So now it is time for asking some questions. Why did the sage reject all the rewards given to him by King Janaka of Videha? What do you mean by desire? What are the states of consciousness? Please write to me your answers at arghyathinks@gmail.com. I'll wait for your answers. And until then,
Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Hubhopper is India's leading podcast creation platform. Start your podcast with Hubhopper Studio and get your voice heard across platforms like Spotify, Ghana, Google Podcast, Wink Music, and more. Click on the link in the episode description or visit www.hubhopperstudio.com. Source content collected from various books on Upanishads, such as Messages of the Upanishads by Swami Ranganathanada, Brhadaaranyaka Upanishad by Swami Madhavananda, 8 Upanishads from Advaita Ashrama, Upanishads.org, Vedas and Upanishads for Children by Roopa Pai, and several other write ups and thoughts on Upanishads. Background music is sourced from various royalty free music sources, Apple Loops, Internet Archives with non commercial 4.0 international license. Om Shanti chants are from YouTube source Gaia Sanskrit. This podcast was conceptualized, scripted, narrated, and audio designed by Arghya Goswami.